Genesis chapter 49 tonight, one more chapter after tonight, and we'll be through the book of Genesis. And if you want to start looking ahead, I think I mentioned last week, but you can start looking at the book of Daniel. That's where we're going next. So it's going to be a good study, isn't it, Will? Will's going to teach the second part, so he's really excited. Genesis chapter 49. Of course, you've been with us. We've been kind of tracing the life of Jacob and Joseph through the book of Genesis. And we're kind of at the point now where Jacob's getting ready to depart from this life. And one of the things that he does is he calls all his sons in and blesses them before he passes from this life. That's basically what Genesis chapter 49 is about. It's really about the future of Israel and the future of those tribes and his sons that's represented by those, or representing those tribes. So question number one, and maybe you've kind of noticed that as you read through chapter 49 here. If you didn't have time to read, maybe you'll pick up on it here as we go through tonight. But this question is one, I know we've talked about it before, but again, it's kind of the context here of Genesis chapter 49. Why do children from the same parents growing up in the same home often turn out to be very different? Would you agree that's the case?
Can be.
Can be. Not always, but it can be, right? Not uncommon, is it? So why is that the case?
Battle going on each other's good and evil. And
Okay.
they make their own decisions about that, what they're going to do.
Yeah? Yeah. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, doesn't it? You kind of think about, I think there's a variety of factors that go into influencing and molding a person and their character into who they're going to be. I think their friends make a big difference. If you get mixed up with the wrong people or you choose the wrong or run with the wrong crowd, that can really influence the direction of your life, can't it? Especially as a young person. Sometimes family expectations, we talked about it before, but, that firstborn, you always have such high expectations for them. I think by the last one, you're probably a little more realistic as to what to expect out of them. But, if we treat them in different ways and expect different things from them, that can kind of encourage or discourage them one way or the other. A lot of different factors and varieties go into that, but ultimately, all those things, even if a person has had a horrible upbringing, the worst, can that be overcome? Yeah, there's examples of that in the Bible, right? So we know that's not the sole. Those aren't the sole factors that contribute to a person and how they turn out in life. But it really has to come down to, like Steve said, every person has to make their own choices, don't they? And if a person has a good heart, the heart is the determining factor of what makes us who we are today and who we're going to be in the future. If you have a good heart, you're going to be a good person. If you have a bad heart, you're going to be a bad person, aren't you? And again, sometimes it may be a little more difficult to overcome obstacles in life, but if your heart is right, it's going to determine the type of person you're going to be. And not everybody's going to be the same person, are they? Not everybody's going to be good, not everybody's going to be bad. But as you look through Jacob's sons, these guys, a lot of them were night and day difference, weren't they? And it I don't think it really had to do with how they were brought up or, what was expected from them by their parents. You think it just had to do with their hearts and what kind of people they determined they were going to be. So let's read a little bit about them here in Genesis chapter 49, talk about what the future held for these men and their tribes. Question number 2 here. What did Jacob do before he died? And he called all of his sons together, basically so he could tell them what was going to happen to them in the days to come or in the future. The word blessing is used here, thinking about 3 different times in talking about his sons. But as you read through this, some of these things that were going to happen to his sons weren't really a blessing, were they?
He wasn't holding back much, was he?
No. He just told them, and I think this is, again, one of these, well, it has to be a prophetic blessing that's being put upon them by him, being revealed to him their future and what it would hold for each one of them. Because as a person, there was no way Jacob could have known this. But if God did reveal it to him, of course, he would have known that. And in that sense, I think it's used, the word blessing is used. Not that everything that was going to happen to these sons was going to be positive in nature, but it was a blessing in the sense that it was a divine revelation that had been given to them by God. And so basically what Jacob is doing is he's announcing what the Lord had in store for his sons in the future. But it also, one of the themes that you'll see, how their future ran in accordance with their character and their conduct. And so, in other words, their behavior basically had determined what the future was going to hold for them. Is that true for us today? Is our behavior going to affect our future in any way?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reap what you sow.
That's exactly right? That's the principle. And if you study these guys and you study about what they've done, that's basically what their future held. They were going to reap whatever they had sowed. Of course, it doesn't mean a person can't change, but basically how we act now is going to affect what happens to us in the future. And really, this is part of God's revelation to them. How is God going to use them in his great plan, to bring about this nation, to bring about the promised Messiah, and of course all the blessings that would come along with it. So that's really what this chapter is, more than just, a son talking to or a father talking to his sons. It's really God's revelation to his descendants, what's going to happen to them, how he's going to use them in this great plan that he has. So let's start talking about some of these. And of course, we're going to start with the sons of Leah here. We've already discussed before, Reuben was the firstborn, but question number 3 here, what did Jacob have to say about Reuben? And again, this isn't just about him as an individual. This is really about the tribe that was going to come in the future also.
Something pretty much that he wouldn't excel, and then kind of laid out all the reasons why.
Yeah, and when you stop and you think about Reuben should have excelled, right? Why? He was the firstborn, right? He was supposed to be the one who received the birthright. Remember, the double inheritance, the double portion. He was the one who should have been the head of the family. He was the one who should have possessed the most authority within that family after Jacob departed. And so he should have been a person who, was prosperous and who excelled in this life. But he wasn't going to. Why? Yeah. He had character flaws, didn't he? And of course, immorality was one of those character flaws. If you live as an immoral person here upon this earth, that's going to affect what the future holds for you. But he showed a lack of discipline, a lack of self-control, lack of restraint whenever he slept with his father's concubine, and because of that, he lost the birthright privilege. We're going to kind of trace that down as we go through these sons tonight and talk a little bit more about that. But he would not excel. What do you remember as you think back in the history of the Old Testament? What do you remember about the tribe of Reuben as far as any Bible stories or anything goes?
He was the one that pulled Jacob up in the other one. But that Reuben that saved Job. Was that Reuben?
Was it Reuben or Judah?
I don't know. I'm asking.
Well, don't ask me. Don't ask me on the spot. I don't remember.
I think it was Reuben.
Was it?
It was Reuben.
Okay. So, as far as from this point on, what else you remember about it? Or the tribe?
His tribe.
Nothing, do you? And that was the prophecy that Jacob gave. You know, he wasn't going to excel. That tribe wasn't going to be anything. And you look at it back through the history of God's people, nothing much ever came from it. You know, don't really hear a lot about it. No great leaders came out of it, anything like that. But again, you reap what you sow, don't you? And so because he had lacked that self-control and that discipline, his tribe was not going to excel within the land of Canaan. There's a couple of things I thought kind of interesting. If you do go back and look a little bit about the tribe of Reuben, whenever Korah rebels against Moses in Numbers chapter 16, the sons of Reuben were part of that rebellion. You look in Judges chapter 5, whenever Deborah and Barak called for the children of Israel to come, the tribe of Reuben sat at home. They didn't step up. And so, again, there's a lot of negative things I can think about as you think back through their history, but not very many positive things that you're going to read about. You just never really knew what to expect from this tribe, and that was, I think, kind of a reflection of Reuben. You know, sometimes he did some good things, sometimes he was about as bad of a scoundrel as you could think of. But his character was reflected through the history of that tribe too. Okay, the next person in line, or the next people in line, sons of Leah, for the birthright were Simeon and Levi. And question number 4 here on your handout, what does Jacob have to say about those two sons?
Cruel.
Yeah, they were two of a kind, weren't they? They were two peas in a pod, we might say. You got those two together and you were in trouble. And of course, we read about one of those stories in the Bible. Their sins were, you know, anger and cruelty and violence. Very violent individuals, very cruel people. But that was due to their anger. And their weapon, you go down and you read a little bit more about them, their weapon was violence. That was what they used whenever they fought back or fought against people. They were always violent individuals. But how do you remember them in the past as you read about them?
Well, they were chosen to be the priest.
Okay.
Levi.
Yeah, there's a reason why. We'll talk a little bit about it here in a minute. But what about before this point? What do you remember about them? Remember the story of their cruelty and their violence?
Yeah,
They were the
well,
ones that killed the people over their sister.
Yeah. Remember that one of the princes of a pretty major city had actually raped their sister, and because of that, they killed the entire city. I mean, not just the prince. Well, I say they killed the entire city. They killed all the males, and they took all the spoil and the plunder for themselves and made the women and the children slaves. But that's a little bit of a reflection of their cruelty and their violence. They were very violent people. So Jacob talks a little bit about that, and one of the things, isn't it mentioned in there, they like to hamstring oxen just for fun? That was what they did for fun. You know, they like to cut the hamstring of an oxen so it couldn't work anymore. But that was their idea of fun. I mean, very violent, very, very cruel individuals. So you think about Simeon, of course, their behavior. Jacob didn't approve of their behavior in any way. You know, he never went along with what they did to that city or to the people in it. But their anger was to be cursed because they had been so cruel and so fierce when it came to their anger. They had to be, and this is the prophecy, these two couldn't stay together. Too much violence, too much cruelty, too much anger. So God had to divide them up in a way to keep them separate from one another. And so when you think about the tribe of Simeon, do you remember where Simeon lay? Yeah. in the middle of the tribe of Judah. It's kind of interesting because it's the only tribe that didn't really have a spot that they could kind of say, well, we're free to do whatever we want. Judah surrounded them on every side. And there was a reason God put their inheritance in the middle of Judah. It was because of their fierceness and their cruelty. And Judah was supposed to kind of watch them and keep them in check, so to speak. We'll talk a little bit more about Judah as we go along here. But it's kind of interesting because really that tribe it really just kind of dissolved into Judah. When you get to the point of Moses blessing the different tribes, the only tribe he doesn't mention in that blessing is Simeon. And so it's believed at kind of that point they'd already kind of dispersed, so far that they weren't hardly even a tribe anymore. But God did his best to scatter them and to divide them up, keep them separate from one another. So that brings us to Levi, right? What did he do to the tribe of Levi?
Well, they were scattered really through the land and didn't have any land.
Yeah.
Really of their own. They had area, part of the city, but
yeah, they had places where they could live, but they never really had any possessions that they could call their own, any land territory. And you look at the tribe of Levi, it is true that they did become priests, but they were also dispersed throughout the promised land. They were never really allowed to own any real territory. They were given homes in 48. Remember, there were 48 Levitical cities. Where were those cities located?
when they scattered throughout the whole, whole land.
Just here and there, and every tribe had 4 cities, 4 Levitical cities. And so they were just here and they were there. Nothing was real close to each other or anything like that. But Levi, the tribe of Levi did produce some pretty important leaders of Israel. Can you think of anybody from the tribe of Levi who was a significant leader in Israel? Aaron? Okay.
Barnabas, when he was.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a Levite. Joshua, was he a Levite? I don't know. He may have been. I don't think I put him on my list. Let me look here. Who was Aaron's brother? Moses. He was a Levite, wasn't he? You have Moses. You have Aaron. You have Phinehas, one of the sons of Aaron. Who would be some of the other ones? New Testament. John the Baptist. Was he a Levite? What did his father do? He's a priest, wasn't he? So it had to be a Levite, didn't he? A lot of important leaders in Israel's history came from the tribe of Levi. Eli, that's another one I've got on the list here. Ezra. So several important leaders. The only other tribe who had, I would say, more leaders than the tribe of Levi would have been the tribe of Judah. There are a lot of people who came out of the tribe of Judah who became great leaders in Israel. So that's you, again, you kind of think back through the Old Testament and you look forward to the Promised Land and think about these people, what happened to them. It was really based upon the behavior of their descendants. The people who really were named, the tribes were named after. And it's kind of interesting just to see how that, coincides with each other throughout the history of the Old Testament. All right, so Reuben didn't get the birthright. Simeon and Levi didn't get the birthright either because of their cruelty and their violence. And that brings us to question number 5 here, Judah. What did Jacob say about Judah?
Your brothers are bound down to.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing as you look through the Old Testament, and I don't know if I'm wrong here, feel free to correct me, but I think up to this point, basically the promised seed has gone along with the birthright. In other words, the person who received the birthright, starting with it, well, with Isaac, that person was the person through whom Jesus would descend. And so the birthright and the promised seed, they kind of stuck together. But something happens right here at this point. It's interesting because the birthright is separated at this point from the messianic promise, the promised seed. And so part of the reason that we know that is because of what happens here with Judah. But basically it splits in two at this point. We have Reuben, we have Simeon, we have Levi. They've all forfeited the birthright. So Jacob doesn't pass the birthright and the promised seed on to the same son. Who gets the birthright?
In this particular case, the first one is supposed to be,
Yeah.
but in this particular case, it'd be Judah.
Joseph got the birthright. Birthright's the double portion. Remember, he gets 2 tribes in Israel through his sons. He gets the double inheritance or the double portion. But the promised seed is given to Judah. And I think part of the reason that's the case is because he's really the next in line for the birthright. Think about Reuben and Simeon and Levi. They've been disqualified. Joseph was his favorite son, and so he ends up getting the double portion or the double inheritance. But turn over real quick to 1 Chronicles. This is an interesting passage here. 1 Chronicles chapter 5. If you don't understand what I'm trying to say, if I'm not doing a good job explaining it, maybe this will straighten it out a little bit more. 1 Chronicles chapter 5, beginning in verse 1. Here's what it says. Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, he was indeed the firstborn, but because he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, so that the genealogy is not listed according to the birthright. See the genealogy and the birthright split? That's what he's talking about right here in this passage. Yet Judah prevailed over his brothers, and from him came a ruler, although the birthright was Joseph's. So you have the genealogy of Christ and the birthright split at this point. Up to this point, you look back through history, they've kind of gone hand in hand. But at this particular time, Joseph receives the birthright, the double portion or the inheritance. Judah gets the genealogy of Christ. And again, I think part of the reason is because he was the next in line. It was supposed to be basically get the right of the firstborn, but Joseph got it instead. So Judah was chosen to be the leader of the family. He was the ancestral or the patriarch or the leader. And you think about the tribe of Judah. That tribe produced a lot of good leaders, didn't it? A lot of great kings came out of the tribe of Judah, right? You think of some? David, right? Who else? Solomon? Any others come to mind? Josiah? Go through the good kings of the Old Testament. Asa, Jehoshaphat, Hezekiah, Uzziah, all those guys came from the tribe of Judah. And one of the things that you see is Judah basically maintained the control, I guess you could say, of the family, of the tribe. And that was passed on to them through the birthright. Once David got into power, he became the king. Judah held on to the scepter, and that's what Jacob talks about here. The scepter is not going to depart from Judah until when? Until Christ comes. So once David got a hold of the scepter, once he became king, the tribe of Judah remained in power until Jesus came. And when Jesus came, then of course, the Jews, God caught up with everybody and dealt with them accordingly. But that was the prophecy that Jacob's talking about here. It was the ancestral privilege, the lineage of Christ. And so Judah's greatest contribution or greatest leader was going to be Jesus himself. Kind of interesting there, just the time or the split of that particular point. All right, question number 6. Some of these others, there's not a lot said about, so we'll not spend much time. What's said about Zebulun?
You dwell near the sea.
Yeah, their border was only about 10 miles from the sea. Sidon was in between them and the sea. Sidon, of course, was a old city that was full of commerce, full of trade. And Zebulun was a very highly commercial traffic area. And generally, when you're in a high or a heavy commercial traffic area, what happens to the environment?
It was downhill.
Well, it goes downhill, but there's also a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, you're right in both cases, I think. But economically, it's pretty good, isn't it? And so Zebulun here, they're going to be in a place that would enjoy the blessing of prosperity. That because of their ability to trade and all the commerce that went through it, Zebulun's greatest contribution to the nation of Israel was helping. They were helped out through trading and, passing on of goods and, things that other tribes would need but wouldn't necessarily have access to like them. And I think that's one of those great lessons I think about. Sometimes we think we need to be in the forefront of the line in order to be doing good. Sometimes you just need to be helping other people. And that's what they did. That's what the tribe of Zebulun did. Again, think about their history. What do you remember about them? They're not going to be one of those tribes in the forefront, are they? Like a lot of these other tribes. But they did do a lot of good by, helping and serving God's people. That's sometimes the best good that we can do. Question number 7 here. What does Jacob say about Issachar?
He was hardworking and strong as a donkey.
Yeah. Issachar, very donkey, of course, to us, we don't think of them as very valuable. And back then, they were probably, I would say they were the most important animal of that day and age. And part of it had to do with travel and trade. If you were traveling, if you were carrying goods, what kind of animal did you use? You used a donkey, didn't you? Very valuable at that. And they were worked hard. Did a lot of hard work, a lot of useful things for people. And that was the tribe of Issachar. But the problem was this: they were such hard workers. Whenever they get into the land and they start working that land, they find out the potential of it. They decide, well, this is what we want to do. We're going to work hard and we're going to make lots of money and we're going to prosper. And so there weren't really any, they weren't like Zebulun in the contributing factor. They became pretty selfish in and of them, the tribe in and of itself. Won't read about a lot of good things that they were able to accomplish there, though. So we just get through Leah here. Let's go over to the sons of Bilhah, and we'll run through some of these pretty quickly here. What does Jacob say concerning Dan?
He should be a serpent, by the way.
Yeah, Dan produced some pretty capable rulers. Probably one of the most famous was Samson. Samson came from the tribe of Dan. But what do you remember Dan most for?
Beersheba to Dan, top to bottom.
Their idolatry, wasn't it? And that's probably what he's talking about there. They're going to attack like a hidden snake. You're not going to know your bit until it's too late. And when you think about what Dan did to turn away faithful followers from God, or to keep people from being faithful to God, they were probably one of the worst tribes. When it came, they were the first to dive off into idolatry as a tribe. And then, of course, that had a major effect upon the nation of Israel for the rest of their existence. Not a lot of good came out of that tribe either. What about Gad and Asher? Question 9 here in Naphtali. Gad was a tribe, if you look at it, it was surrounded by the Midianites. the other Arabians that would have been in that area. And because they were surrounded by all these basically nomadic tribes or nations, they had to fight them a lot, because they dwelt close to their borders. But eventually they were going to be able to overcome them. That was prophecy that would be given to them. They were the people who stuck with it until the job was done. Asher, they inherited some of the most fertile soil within the promised land itself. A lot of trade routes crisscrossed through the tribe of Asher. And so they became extremely wealthy. And again, like many of these tribes who enjoyed wealth and luxury, that became their priority. They weren't worried about all these other tribes. If somebody needed help, they didn't care because they were rich and living in luxury. And so they didn't really feel the need to help. Naphtali, prophesied about him, he's going to be like a deer that's let loose. You ever seen a wild animal that's let loose? Naphtali got put into servitude. Which judge was that set him free? I don't remember. You'll have to look it up. Can't remember which one. But after that, they got set free, and basically you never seen hide or hair of them again. They were just running all over with joy. But not a lot of interaction or things with the other tribes. All right, so let's talk about the sons of Rachel here. What does Jacob have to say about Joseph? Question 10.
Very fruitful.
Yeah. So remember, Jacob basically split the birthright from the ancestral line of Christ. And so Joseph enjoyed the prosperity. He enjoyed the double portion. Judah got all the leadership. They got the authority that generally came with the birthright before, and they got the promised seed. But Joseph got the prosperity. And that prosperity, that double portion, his two sons actually received a land inheritance with the other sons of Jacob. Remember, we talked about there's no tribe of Joseph, right? But there are the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim. Those were the sons of Joseph. And so his sons got from him, he got two tribes through his sons. And all the other sons of Israel or Jacob only got one tribe, or some none, right? So that was the prosperity, the double portion. Manasseh and Ephraim, I think I talked a little bit about it last week. They were some of the largest tribes in the northern kingdom, though. They were very prosperous, very, very numerous, just like Jacob said would happen. Let's see here. Some strong leaders that came from these tribes. Hey, Steve, I got Joshua in here. So maybe, I don't remember which. Maybe he's from Ephraim or Manasseh. I don't remember which one. 5 of the 15 judges came from these two tribes. You have Gideon, remember Ehud. Who else? Jair is one of those judges. A couple other pretty major judges that go along with them too. But God would be with them. God would bless them. Joseph received the blessing of prosperity. And so you look at those two nations, and that's what happened to them. Very prosperous, very, very numerous. What was said about Benjamin? Question 11. Yeah. What do you remember when you think about the tribe of Benjamin? What do you remember about them, if anything?
Almost eliminated.
Yeah, at one point.
But Paul was mentioned,
Paul was?
wasn't he?
I don't know. You're coming up with some good questions.
He said it himself in his deal, from the tribe of another bit.
I don't remember.
Where's it? Can you tell me where it's at, and I'll look it up. Where he gives a description of himself.
Let's see. Would be Acts 23, I think, maybe.
You're gonna be
Philippians
close.
3:5.
What does that say?
I don't know. So good as
All right, we'll figure it out later. Let's. Do you remember Benjamin was a tribe of warriors? You remember that?
Left-handed warrior.
Yeah, they were like snipers.
What was the deal?
hit your head with a rock and never miss? Or?
Yeah, they were outstanding warriors. So they were fighters. You didn't want to get in a fight with the tribe of Benjamin. And I think that's part of what's being spoken of here, that ravenous wolf. Who would want to fight a ravenous wolf? Well, you know he's going to put up a fight, don't you? And that was the tribe of Benjamin. A lot of soldiers, lot of battles. Very fierce whenever they were involved in battle. It was one of the smallest tribes, but it was one of the toughest too. One of those tribes you didn't want to get in a fight with or mess with them. King Saul, remember he came from the tribe of Benjamin. Abner, his military commander, very valiant soldier. He came from there too. A lot of those fighters that you read about in the Bible came from that tribe. So question 12 here, what is the relationship between how Jacob's sons lived their lives and what Jacob said would happen to them? Well, we already talked about it. They were basically a revelation of their human character and conduct and what God intended to do with them because of that. And basically what you'll find here, three of those sons learned that their past conduct cost them a future inheritance. So, the great lesson for us is, again, Steve kind of pointed out in the beginning, you're to reap what you sow. If you go out here and you live wicked and evil and immoral lives, you're going to pay the price in the end, aren't you? Lastly, he calls all these sons together. Question 13, he instructs his sons he wanted to be buried in Canaan. He wanted his bones to be carried out of Egypt. We already talked about that before. Whenever Jacob faced death, did he believe in the promised land? Yeah, that's what talking about carrying his bones there was all about. It was about his faith in one day they were going to inherit this great land from God. That's us as Christians today. When we die, our faith should be in the promised land of heaven. We're going there. Going to be there. So what happens, question 14, after Jacob blesses his sons? He dies just like all the other great men and women of faith in the Bible. And when he died, he was rewarded, just like they were too. So, all right, out of time. Anybody got any thoughts, comments, questions? Genesis 49.